What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Juliana Forlano. Welcome to act.tv's new show. It's called Act Now. This is a series about activism, what's happening, why, what's next, and how you can get involved. So stay tuned.
What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now.
Hi, everybody. Juliana Forlano here. Part of Act Now. Longtime member of act.tv's community. You'll know that I'm the correspondent from New York City, where I cover all the protests and rallies and things that are happening in my fine town. We also have correspondents in DC. We have correspondents in LA, and I'm sure you're going to be hearing from them as well. This is our new show. We are covering where we're marching, why we're marching, and basically what happens after we march, what's happening with the issues, what's happening with the people involved, how we can basically stay on top of those issues that we marched for, and keep our electeds' feet to the fire and make sure things keep moving forward. Right now, you can watch the show live on our act.tv Facebook page, which might be where you are at this moment. You're going to be able to watch it on YouTube, on our Twitter page, and a bunch of other places too. So also, if you're watching on our act.tv Facebook page, you can leave comments under the video that you're watching and we will respond to them. Just make sure that you I know our people will keep it civil, but basically if you make a comment with your name on it, we might actually use your name. So just keep that in mind. And it's way better than sitting and yelling at the TV with no one can hear you. We might actually respond. So today we're going to be talking about how a revolution in politics and society basically needs a media revolution. Now, Fox News already knew that because they started their revolution with, a co-optation of the media. And we on the left, we need a media as well that's not a corporate media. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be speaking to Alex Lawson. He is a co-founder of We Act Radio, an independent outlet in DC. And we're also going to be talking to economist Richard Wolff, he hosts Economic Update, which has gone from being a small YouTube channel or a small show on WBAI, the Pacifica channel here in New York City, to being nationwide and even beyond that on hundreds of radio channels and on YouTube. And he is being asked to speak. So it's everywhere, which is really cool that a socialist is being asked to speak about, economics all over. That shows that the independent media actually does work for us. So without further ado, I'm going to go to the interview we had with Alex Lawson. Okay, so as promised at the beginning of the show, I have Alex Lawson, founder of We Act Radio and a partner on Act TV. Alex was so supportive of us launching this project because he, has been constantly saying that if the left is going to have a revolution, if progressives are going to have a revolution, they need to start with a revolution in media. I'm so happy to have you here to talk to our audience on our very first show. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Juliana.
So tell me about what you think we need to be doing here on the left and what you've been doing in order to bridge the gap between what the regular media is leaving out and what needs to be heard.
So what I always say is before we have a political revolution, we need a media revolution. And the reason we need a media revolution is because the quote unquote regular media is the corporate media. These are a few channels owned by 3 companies now. It used to be 6. We used to always say all the media you consume is owned by 6 corporations. But now that's down to 3, and they're trying to get it down to 2. And obviously they want to get it to 1 so that there's one giant corporation that is controlling every piece of information that you consume. And, when there's 3, it's the same thing. They're all operating together. And the strongest propaganda. So first of all, the corporate media just lies. They lie about things. They lied us into the Iraq war. You can go back and watch that now, and it's just disgusting. Knowing it was obvious then, but knowing what we know now, it's even more disgusting. But there's also this somewhat more profound propaganda that's been well studied, and it's the stories that aren't told. That is a really, truly powerful way that these corporations control what we are allowed to talk about, is by ignoring stories that are relevant to the people, especially stories that show the tremendous power that we have when we stand together, when we raise our voices together. For example, they ignored Bernie Sanders as much as they could. They iced him out of corporate media coverage until it was impossible to do so, because he had found these other channels like your show, actTV, shows on We Act Radio, the Tom Hartman program, these truth tellers and this independent media that is growing right now and is part of the media revolution. I would say we are the media revolution.
Have you seen in your work, and even under the current administration, more people turning away from mainstream news and finding other outlets?
So I think that it has been there's been a steady kind of searching for other truth, like people using digital to find different avenues of information. When you look at the demographics, that's completely true. You can see the age cohorts that where they're getting their information from. I think that Donald Trump is such a like just he's an unrepentant liar, and he's so bad that he it's hard to say what he's doing, because in some respects he's actually given some of the so-called left corporate media like MSNBC a giant shot of adrenaline, where you're seeing numbers on Rachel Maddow, for example, doing incredibly well, and I'm happy about that. Like good for
You
Rachel
are.
Maddow.
That's kind of my question is are we happy that Rachel Maddow is doing so well? I mean, I hear my friends saying that they watch her and that they love her and they're so grateful for the Russia coverage, but it's very hard to on one hand, love her, trust her, and are thrilled that she's doing that kind of coverage, and at the same time recognize that she works for one of those three corporations. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I mean, good for her, Rachel Maddow. Like that's good for her personally. You just got to remember that MSNBC, the so-called liberal station, is as liberal as Comcast allows it to be. It's owned by Comcast. That's not a progressive force in this country. It's a force for monopolization of power. It's a source for continuing the upward redistribution of wealth. And so, I think it's somewhat good that people who maybe were watching Fox News or CNN or something like that are changing the channel to go and find MSNBC. But you're also, that trend is happening at the same time as you're seeing young people are searching way outside of these cable news channels, and they're not tuning into any of those. For example, the actTV, the digital town hall with Bernie Sanders on inequality, actTV was one of three digital sponsors there, digital platforms. And it was 1.7 million people tuned in to watch a 2-hour presentation on inequality in America. I mean, prime time on MSNBC soaking wet is not going to hit those numbers. So there is definitely something going on here. And the media revolution is continuing, and it's accelerating. And I can't wait for the numbers on all of the corporate medias to be down to zero. They're never going to get there. Some people are going to continue to get their news, their so-called news, from there. But the media revolution is continuing, and I will say it reflects the corporate media. We can actually box them in, right? If we are covering an issue, this is what we did with Social Security. We actually told the story of Social Security honestly, and just continued to tell our own story And then the corporate media had to tell the story in an honest fashion. And I feel like that is a huge part. So even if someone does watch MSNBC, the fact that you're out here, that ActTV exists, that Richard Eskow has his show, The Zero Hour, this is all about also holding the corporate media to account.
Alex, what do you make of net neutrality's current state, and how do you think that'll affect the independent media?
Obviously, that is an attack by the monopoly. You know, these three, it's a cartel, and they want to
What?
control
That's a
our act.
great word.
It's a cartel. It 100% is a cartel. They raise the barriers of entry to new entrants into the market. They operate in collusion with each other. If we had a functioning FTC, they would be smashed to smithereens because they are operating as a cartel. They want to control the net neutrality, and their attacks on it are exactly because they're terrified of the media revolution. They want to control not just the content, but the pipes. They want to control, they want to be vertically and horizontally integrated so that they can dominate the information sphere completely and totally. If you want to know somewhat what they look to, it's a Chinese system. They want to look to the state controlled Chinese media as their model, what they would love to do. Be able to completely control what you can and cannot see, what you can and cannot talk about.
We're kind of at the end of our time now, but I really appreciate you joining us. I mean, it's not a secret that you're already part of the ActTV team, and you were very supportive of us launching this show and this new endeavor. Could you tell people where they can find We Act Radio if they're not right in DC?
Sure. You can just go to weactradio.com. You can find us online there. Weactradio.com. We have some great shows. You should look out for The Zero Hour with Richard Eskow. You can find it online. This is thezerohour.com, or on Facebook, search for The Zero Hour. It's on Free Speech TV, so it's a television show as well. And yeah, you know, before the political revolution can be achieved, we need to foment this media revolution. And we all have to do our part, sharing truth tellers and spreading the word about how to find and amplify independent media.
Thank you so much, Alex. We look forward to having you back on the show, both to talk about media and to talk about Social Security, as that becomes an ever increasing important topic under the Trump administration. Thanks again, Alex.
Thanks, Juliana.
Again, you can find Alex Lawson at weactradio.com. He also, you can find him at Social Security Works also, because he does a lot of work to make sure that the messaging around Social Security, that it's bankrupt, that it's not working, the messaging around that does not stick. The right-wing messaging does not stick. He basically tells the truth about Social Security and how it works, and it's easy to find him at a place called Social Security Works. We're going to talk about net neutrality later on in the show because it's currently really big time under attack. The FCC voted to let cable stations ruin the internet, but next week the Senate is going to vote on a resolution to overturn the FCC and restore net neutrality. The vote is currently at 50 to 51, so we need some help flipping your senators who may not be voting yes to this. So you can call Congress and tell your lawmaker to overturn the FCC and restore net neutrality. We're going to talk a little bit about this at the end of the show, but if you want to just pick up your phone and start calling now, it's 858-264-0403. So this show is basically about taking action, whether you're out in the street marching or you're just, if there's no march today, you can take action. There are going to be some small actions at the different senators' homes who are either on the fence or who are not so likely to vote this way. They need to hear from their constituents. So you can find out if yours is being targeted. You can attend an event on Monday by going to online events.battleforthenet.com. Again, it is events.battleforthenet.com. I'm from upstate New York, from Syracuse, New York. If any of my Syracuse people are watching, there is a representative in our fine hometown who doesn't think that the internet should be free and open to commerce other than big businesses, which is basically what net neutrality comes down to. There's more to it, obviously, but we will follow up on that. Net neutrality is so very important to having an independent media. And we have some questions coming in from our page. So this is really exciting to me. One of our questions, how can we make our media stand out from the infinite signal of the internet? Well, I don't know if I can answer that question at 100%, but I do think that one of the more important things that we can do is share where we are getting our media from with our fellows. Not everyone knows about Progressive Voices Radio. Not everyone knows about We Act Radio. Not everyone knows about ActTV. And some people, I'll give you a little example, and then we got to go to our next interview. But when Alex was talking about how they iced Bernie Sanders out, I went on Huffington Post Live when that was still a thing. And I was on a panel and I said, well, I support Bernie Sanders. And they basically just laughed at me. And Huffington Post was supposed to be, a liberal outlet. And I know they were bought by AOL. They still maintained sort of this liberal stance. But when I started talking on their program about how Bernie Sanders is a viable contender, not only did the other guests try to take me down a notch, but the host was not too thrilled about me having brought that up as a reasonable possibility. Little do they know that he had the independent media behind him. I'm going to go over to our next interview with Professor Richard Wolff now, and I'll be back after that. So I'm here for a brief moment with Professor Richard Wolff, economist and host of Economic Update. He's the host of this fantastic show about capitalism and economics and what's happening. And you launched it into the independent media sphere, and it has caught fire. Now we're starting a show, you're on it right now, that's about marching, that's about activism, that's about what's happening in the streets, why we march, what happens after we march, what are the economics behind the issues. And I want, the idea for launching this show is that in order to have a political revolution, we need a media revolution first. Can you tell me a little bit about why you launched your program and what you've seen since launching it?
Sure. We launched our program because we had an idea, like your idea, which was that more people have figured out that the economic system is really not working, and that we need to talk about that, and we need to think about alternatives. More people are in that place than anyone in America likes to admit. That was an idea. And the way to test the idea was to say, okay, let's go on the radio. That's how we started before we became also television. And let's explain why we think this. And let's see, it's the old joke. If you run the flag up the pole, will anybody salute? And if they do, you got the right flag, and otherwise you get another one. And we've been blown away. We started in March of 2011, and now we go into 50+ million homes. It's an amazing, awesome kind of opportunity, but it really speaks to the fact that there is wildly underappreciated social criticism, radicalism, interest in social change, far beyond what the mass media, the old mass media, dared to inquire about, let alone to show. The proof is we've been growing and growing without stop since we started. I mean, it's a straight line. We keep wondering when the dips will happen. But for the moment, it's amazing. And I think that your program and your idea is really the same thing coming from another direction. And what we want, because we can see it, is that the understandings we hope to develop lead to people being active, because that's the only way we're going to get out of this situation.
They should put us on right after you.
Yeah.
We'll tell you what to do.
And we should really literally cross-fertilize in the sense that what we're trying to help people understand should lead them to understand why marching is what needs to be done. And the more the marching happens, the more the audience is created for what we're trying. I mean,
why does marching need to be done, in your opinion?
Because there's no other way to get any of this done. I mean, the fakery that we've been living with for half a century is that leaving things to the professional politicians in the Republican and Democratic Party is a losing proposition. I mean, there are differences between them.
Clearly.
Yeah, there are differences between them. I don't mean to suggest there aren't. But neither of them is dealing with the foundational problems of this society. And that's the only reason a weird, crazy person is president now, because there was such disgust with business as usual that anybody who looked like he was off the grid, out of the club, weird, different, would be given, if he mouthed enough platitudes, an opportunity, because anything, you can see it in other countries. In Italy, there is a professional comedian who
love
Pepe
them.
Grillo, who does that. In France, they gave it to this young man who nobody knew, who nobody cared about, because they were so disgusted with the old one. I mean, you see it again and again and again. There's a mass sense that the capitalist system and the political parties that have been cheerleaders for it all along, like Republicans and Democrats, they've had it.
What if Bernie Sanders wins and gives you the tap?
Well,
would you work within the system?
I think there's so many ifs in that two sentences
I know.
Just did, you know.
A girl can dream.
Yes, me too. I think the big question, to be serious for a moment, the big question for Bernie Sanders is, are you going to stay connected to that political party that has treated you so badly? Or are you going to go to where the heart of most of your followers is, which is a very old American idea? It's new, it's different, let's give it a try. Socialism in America has been so bad-mouthed for so long that it is, in a peculiar way, like an old fashioned. It has come back around the corner and said, you know...
It's the bell-bottoms of
yes,
politics.
It's the new kind of jazzy, sexy thing to get yourself involved.
But doesn't it seem like, you know, a balance to this out-of-control capitalism would be at least somewhere socialism?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the best proposal you could make to Bernie, however he goes, that talking about developing a sector of our economy that's based on worker co-ops, that's based on a whole different notion of solidarity and how people treat each other when they buy and sell from each other, when they hire one another. All of those relationships don't have to be driven by profit for a few. It can be organized to benefit the many. That creating a segment of the economy so we can all see how they work. Let's compare the capitalist sector to this other one, whatever we call it. Let's see what we want. We don't have that choice now. We're given capitalism or nothing. And I think we're done with that. That has not worked out real well.
I can see how easy it is to continue these conversations and to have this conversation, because it's not like you're going to watch daytime news coverage or regular radio coverage and really hear these kinds of ideas.
No, and I think they're percolating everywhere. I just came back from a trip to Los Angeles, gave talks all over the place. I can't describe to you the excitement, the interest. It's not what it was as recently as 5 years ago. It's just a new world, and there's that wonderful excitement. On the one hand, we're scared because times are tough, the president's crazy, you know, we're scared, and we should be. But on the other hand, there's an elation. There's the birth of something new and different, and that's exciting to human beings. And we're at that moment in American politics.
So it's a Karl Marx anniversary, is it not?
Yes, absolutely. And boy, is that right on target. Well, there again, the old coming back and saying, oh boy, have I got things to tell you that you're now willing to listen to when you haven't been for a long time. You know, we can start again, and we can go after this project of a decent society, of a solidaristic society. We don't have to give that up because of horrible things that happened in Russia and China. We're not that limited. And I love the basic question that it works for me. We ought to be asking and answering the question, can we do better than capitalism? And I think a large number of Americans have already figured out we can.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to our next one.
Okay, Juliana, me too.
You can find Richard Wolff's Economic Update on YouTube and a number of other platforms. Just Google Economic Update. right? That's the best way to find you.
Easiest way to find us.
Yeah, and his other work is Democracy at Work. It's about bringing socialism to the workplace, which is also worth a whole nother show.
Conversation,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Keep listening. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody. So that was Richard Wolff and Alex Lawson. This is our first show. It's called Act Now, and we're really glad that you are watching. I just wanted to give a shout out to our viewers. Alan Curtis saying revolution is in the air, and the revolution will be streaming. Kenny Ray says that we need net neutrality, and if we don't force the greedy to act like humans, they won't. Well said. Basically, we're one vote away from a win on net neutrality. So pick up that phone and give a call, 858-264-0403. Just let them know your zip code and tell your representative that you want them to overturn the FCC's rule on net neutrality. Okay, we're going to give you the number again in case you're running to get a pen. It's 858-264-0403. And you can visit battleforthenet.com. Battleforthenet.com. It has a map, and you can see if there's a dot anywhere near you, and those dots represent representatives that need to be flipped and representatives who will have constituents at their doorstops on Monday. So if you want to get active right away, you want to make sure that this show can come to you as freely and openly as possible. It's great to go and meet some of your fellow activists. I looked at that map earlier today, and it's a lot of people in Florida, a lot of people in Texas. There's some upstate New York stuff, even some Colorado, middle of the country a little bit. So, take a look at that map and see if you can be of service on Monday. We're going to be bringing you, on this show, we're going to be bringing you coverage of marches, coverage of rallies. Our next show is about cannabis, the legalization of cannabis, and where we are on that. We have some great interviews. We have some great footage of a rally that just happened in New York City, one of the biggest rallies, most historic, longest running rallies in the world, actually, for cannabis legalization. And now here in New York State, we're on the verge of that. And it was so great to hear from the people on the stage at that, because they really put into terms that's hard not to understand why it's a justice issue. I'm sure people watching on ActTV already know this. So if you know people who might enjoy this content, please share our page with them as usual. And we'll be back. Keep an eye out for this show. We'll be back next week. Please leave your comments on the ActTV Facebook page. That really helps us to be able to produce this kind of content for you. Again, I'm Juliana Forlano, and I'll see you next week.